The body will pass away, but you as spirit, the soul self continues. And the more that you forgive while you're in the body, the less you take with you. So you're really freeing up all of the baggage, the soul baggage. So wherever there's fear, we can bring love to it. And that's what healing is. It is bringing love anywhere there is fear. It is bringing wholeness back to the mind wherever it has been divided by fear. So in practicing forgiveness, you not only clear that clutter from the mind, all those divisions, but in clearing that clutter and those divisions in the mind, you get to see and experience more and more of that oneness of spirit here in your physical perceived reality. Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda. Today I'm offering part 3 of this healing series that I've been sharing with you for the past couple of weeks. And this is all about healing. I'm basically giving you a class on healing. But rather than being in the meditation form, which is what I usually teach, just sharing it in this podcast form. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you are allowing yourself to sit back and relax and take in the energy as well as the words and the communication. So part 3 of healing today is all about forgiveness. If you've listened to the other 2 in this series, you will have heard that I'm sharing this class on healing in this format of 3 parts because I've noticed in my own experiences with healing throughout this lifetime and many others, and in observing others, that really the process of healing is becoming aware, allowing, accepting that which we've become aware of, and then forgiving. And so the last piece really is the crux of it. It's the heart of the matter. We cannot heal if we're not willing to forgive. And so what is forgiveness? What is forgiveness? It's definitely a word that you have heard in various spiritual teachings, and it's not an unfamiliar term to you, but what does it really mean? I think people approach forgiveness in different ways and experience it in different ways, but it's quite simple and it is really just letting go, right? Forgiveness is just to let go, to not hold on to something. And I think where a lot of the confusion comes in, or where we start to feel like, well, there's certain things I can't forgive, right? Because those are unforgivable. That has to do with when we don't want to allow a person's behavior. We don't want to say, oh, that person's behavior is okay. So if you think that forgiveness means basically condoning certain poor behaviors, then you're not going to want to forgive, right? You're going to want to be justified in determining that whatever that person did to you was definitely bad or wrong, and you were in the right and they were in the wrong. Forgiveness really isn't about making a judgment call about someone's behavior, whether or not they actually did that to you and that was good, bad, right, or wrong. Forgiveness is just about, are you holding on to it? Are you allowing that to fester within your body mind? Or are you letting it go? So forgiveness is not about condoning bad behavior. It's not about becoming a doormat, letting yourself be abused, or having no boundaries. It's simply about letting go once the event has happened, letting go of any of the energy that you may still be holding on to related to the event. And so I hear a lot about forgiveness too, where people say, well, forgiveness is, it's about you. It's not about the other person. It's whatever they did. Forgiveness is freeing yourself from, holding on to that anger or frustration about the event or what you perceive as was done wrong to you. And that can be true in a way. That's the first step, is to recognize that you're forgiving for you in order to not continue to harbor ill feelings and harbor self-damaging energy, right? Harboring anger within you. If you continue to stew in anger, that's damaging, right? It's good to let anger move and then let it go, right? We don't want to just let that fire of anger burn within us forever, or we're going to really harm ourselves, our physical body, and our mental wellness. So yes, it is for you. But what's really great about forgiveness is true forgiveness really comes from the recognition of our oneness. Not on a body level. We have different bodies and bodies are separate, but on the level of spirit, right? And so when you're starting off practicing forgiveness, it's about yourself. It's like, okay, I don't want to hold on to this anymore. I want to let this go so that I'm not damaging my own mental health or physical wellness. But as you continue on a path of allowing yourself to practice forgiveness and really getting curious about, well, what is forgiveness? What's really happening here when you forgive? You get closer and closer to the truth, and that is that forgiveness is a recognition of oneness. It's a validation of the truth of oneness of spirit. And that in that oneness of spirit, anything that we're experiencing here in the body that we might perceive as unjust or unfair or a violation, all of that is part of this grand illusion that we're experiencing, right? I know spiritual mystics throughout the ages have used this term Maya or illusion or the great dream. And it's important to remember that and to not allow what happens to us to be a cause to get stuck in this game of the physical realm, right? Because this game of the physical realm is a manifestation of what's going on in the mind. This is all the mind field. Everything we experience and perceive through our physical bodies is the extension of or expression of the mind field, right? So forgiveness, coming back to this true forgiveness and recognition of oneness, forgiveness is happening on that mental level in the mind field. What we're forgiving is in the mind, because that's what the physical realm of perception is. It's the manifestation of the mind. So yes, it is something that is happening on the physical too, but it's really all coming from that mental level. So in practicing forgiveness, we get to recognize, oh, this is part of the mind field that's getting expressed and manifested as what I'm experiencing physically. And so I can forgive on that level. And that actually changes what's happening in the physical, because that's where it's all coming from that mental level. So in practicing forgiveness, you not only clear that clutter from the mind, all those divisions, but you get, in clearing that clutter and those divisions in the mind, you get to see and experience more and more of that oneness of spirit here in your physical perceived reality. So there's no end to the benefit of forgiveness, but that doesn't always mean it's easy, right? Like all forms of healing, and like I've said in previous episodes here, healing is simple. It's not complex. It really is just a matter of letting go. But that's why I've explained in parts 1 and 2 that the first step is awareness, because most of the time we don't even recognize what we're holding on to, right? So that first layer of healing and level of healing is bringing to our consciousness what those divisions are in the mind, what it is that we need to forgive. Because most of the time we're not aware of it. So how do we become aware of it? It's super simple. Just what is right in front of you? What is happening right now in your life that you don't feel peace with? What is happening right now in your life that you feel some kind of way? That there's a disturbance in the field. If you're not feeling at peace or at love, and that doesn't mean you should, override it and try to feel that way, but just to notice, oh yeah, I'm feeling angry about this, or afraid about this, or upset about this, or really sad about this. Acknowledge that, feel those, and then use those feelings to point you in the direction of what is going on in the mind that needs to be forgiven, right? What does that upset come from? What levels in the mind are divided? That's where those upsets are coming from. And what are those divisions? Well, there's so many of them, but I'm going to name a few here. There's blame, right? When we blame others for something, we are dividing ourselves. We're saying, I am not creating. I'm not the creator. That person has done it to me. Now, on a physical level, that might be true. Say you're driving your car, get in a car accident, another car came and plowed into the front of your car because they ran a red light, whatever it was. Hopefully you survived. But in that situation, I'm not saying on the physical level, there's no fault, right? This isn't about, oh, that didn't really happen. And on a physical level, that happened, car hit you, you take necessary action in terms of, getting that reported to the insurance, they cover it. Hopefully there's no extensive medical damage, but all those things get taken care of. But on an internal mental level, the forgiveness sees that this is an opportunity to forgive the part of the mind, which we call the ego, that says, I'm separate, everything's out here. And that's how we maintain that separateness. That's how we defend ourselves from oneness and say, no, I'm not one. I'm not spirit. I'm not part of the whole. They did it to me, right? They're out there doing it to me. I'm separate. So if you can notice the difference in those levels here, on the level of the mind, you're letting that go. This is a part of the movie the ego is making up to try to convince me that I am separate, somebody's doing it to me. On the level of the body, you take care of yourself. If that happened to your body, you take necessary action to support your healing and wellness and hold the other person accountable. So, just to point this out again, like I said at the beginning, forgiveness is not about condoning bad behavior or poor behavior or mistakes that other people made or boundaries that were crossed. Forgiveness is something that happens internally on the level of the mind, recognizing in this mind field that separation is what manifests as everything that we see in this world of separation, and that as we come back to that place of oneness in the mind and forgive, miracles happen, right? I can guarantee you that if in this example of a car accident, if the person, you got in this car accident and your reaction was total anger and blame and just, that person did it to me, they're awful, this is like really getting stuck on that physical level of what happened, the healing on the physical level is also going to be harder. You would have a lot more probably difficulty in, filing the insurance report. Every step along the way is going to be more difficult and met with more roadblocks if you're not on that internal mental level practicing forgiveness. I've seen this so many times with myself and with others where if internally you're in that space of practicing forgiveness, the path forward is smoother. That doesn't mean you don't have to still, follow the logistics of insurance report and car repairs or getting a new car or whatever's involved, maybe seeing a chiropractor or, again, hopefully the damage is not too extensive, but even if it is, that practice of forgiveness is what creates miracles. It's what opens the door for intense healing that is not difficult. I know that to be true because I've seen it so many times, but I just also know it to be true because I see that energy in meditation so many times. I see the difference between what happens when we're not willing to forgive, when we want to just hold on to that and have that division and separation in the mind. That division and separation holds all that energy there, right? And that holding becomes in the body, holding. You can't let it go. You can't. So whatever damage to the body happened, it can't release, right? So healing on that physical level is just releasing stuck energy, releasing toxic energy, releasing anything that has invaded the body that upsets its harmonious flow of the life-giving life force and biology within us, whether that's toxic things or physical injuries. The healing process in the body is allowing that energy to move. The body restores wholeness and wellness. It is designed to do that. Our healing process is just about removing the limits to that, right? And that starts on the mental. So if we're allowing the energy to flow, we're not interfering, we're not holding on, right? Then it just naturally moves and heals. It still takes time in the body, right? It still takes a little bit of time, but it's actually going to be much quicker if we're practicing forgiveness. It always is. That's where that miracle energy comes from, is seeing and recognizing the wholeness and oneness of your beingness as spirit. But again, that doesn't mean ignoring that you have this body mind that appears to be experiencing a whole lot of things that you are experiencing in that body mind. So it's addressing both levels. So blame, I brought this up as an example with a car accident. If you come from blame and you can't let it go that that person did that, that's going to create stuckness in the healing process and in just the process of resolving whatever needs to be resolved in that situation. Another energy of division that shows up in the mind all the time, that we all do this, but we can bring that to awareness and forgive it as it comes up, is judgment. Right? There's so much. Basically, the mind is just walking around judging everything. The ego mind, right? The ego mind is just like, so much judgment. That's what creates that separation between us and everything else. That's literally what defines the ego, is just judgment. And so becoming aware of that judgment means that you don't have to blame yourself for having it. That's what the mind produces, but you also don't have to become it. You can, there's that judgment energy, and let it go right away. And not sit in it, right? We don't have to sit in that judgment. So judgment is kind of a pervasive, underlying, constantly produced energy of the ego mind. And it's part of the mind that once we become aware of and practice forgiveness with, it dissipates and clears, and it's not constantly there. And you can more readily see and be in the vibration of love instead of judgment. But it is a good one to bring to your awareness and to accept. There it is, lots of judgment, and forgive. Because it's almost always there. And then there's the obvious divisive energies in the mind of hate, right? And guilt and shame and competition, kind of just naming a whole bunch of them. But these are ways in which the mind remains divided instead of whole. So again, coming back to healing being the process or the result of restoring wholeness, that really is, again, in the mind, restoring wholeness in the mind. You as spirit, the true essence of your beingness as spirit, can never be divided. That's what spirit is oneness and wholeness and the undivided. That's the definition of spirit. You are essentially the undivided beingness of spirit, created by God. But that gets into a whole nother topic of, God did not create the body. That's part of the mind. And the mind field and the ego creation. But that doesn't mean we don't love it and restore our mind to wholeness. So, but these divisions, coming back to what is dividing the mind and manifesting as unwellness in the body or unwellness in our lives, right? Any kind of experiences in our lives that aren't at peace and wholeness and wellness and joy, and wherever there's a lot of conflict, that can also point you back to what's going on in the mind. And I just want to say, when I say the mind, it's your mind, but the mind is really also just one big mind. So often in looking at what is contained in our mind, we're also looking at, our little corner of the mind, but what else are we harboring within what we perceive as our separate mind that is also part of the collective mind, right? Oftentimes, what we appear to be healing or manifesting through our own body is part of that greater collective. And that's true especially for healers, for those of us on the healing path, for those of us that as souls, we've really been awakening more and more and opening to this path of forgiveness, of letting go and of restoring the experience and the reality of the wholeness and oneness of spirit within us. There's going to be more and more experiences that we discover in our mind that go beyond our seemingly separate mind and part of that more collective wholeness. And that doesn't mean that we're responsible for healing, fixing, or solving everybody else out there. It really still is just about ourself and healing ourself. In the oneness of spirit, you could say there is no one else out there, right? It's all a projection, including your own perceived body mind. But that's important to recognize too, because sometimes, say you have a situation manifesting where, you have certain symptoms that you've been experiencing in the body and you try so hard to heal. Like, what is going on here? I keep having this type of pain or this, various symptoms in the body. And it's easy to, when we have those recurring symptoms and we've tried all the things physically, we've tried different physical healing modalities, but it still goes on. It's easy to think there's something wrong with me, right? What am I doing wrong, right? That's often the question that comes. What am I doing wrong, or what am I missing here? And oftentimes that's because there's more than just one lifetime of division in the mind that you are healing. And two, there's more than just yourself, right? You are still picking up on that larger collective as you heal again what is perceived as your own mind, because the mind isn't separate. It is one big mind field. You're also picking up on that greater collective. And so that might not make you feel better about having symptoms in the body, but just to recognize, like, you don't have to take it personally. Like, you're not being punished. God is not punishing you if you have recurring symptoms or things that don't appear to be healing on the physical level. Just know that doing the deep inner work of restoring wholeness in the mind, that's what really matters, because we're all going to die, right? This too shall pass, the body will pass away. But you, as spirit, the soul self, continues. And the more that you forgive while you're in the body, the less you take with you. That's an important one to remember. The more that you forgive and let go of here in your body mind, while you have a body, the less that you take with you when the body passes away. So you're really freeing up all of the baggage, the soul baggage, so that when this body passes, you will experience the freedom of spirit. Give ourselves a deep breath with that one. This final step of healing, of forgiveness, which is as simple as just letting go, I want to take us through a spectrum from beginner level healing to more advanced, and bring that to this forgiveness. Beginner level forgiveness and advanced. Not to make it a competition of, oh, you're a beginner or not, but just if forgiveness is something that you experience difficulty with, like you recognize, like when there's certain things that happen in your life and someone suggests forgiveness, you're like, yeah, no. Maybe not with that, right? Or if it's just something new that you haven't really thought about much, that you might just naturally do sometimes and sometimes don't, but maybe you don't bring a whole lot of awareness or attention to just how important and vital and central forgiveness is in the role of healing and in your life. So what I might call beginner, or getting started with contemplating and bringing forgiveness into your life, what it might look like is the things that you obviously notice your mind return to, that you, again, feel some kind of way about, that you don't feel at peace about. Things that frustrate you, that anger you, that have you feeling anything but peace and joy, really. Anything that's just like, I don't like that, or you notice a repetition of judgment about this person, or a repetition of blame about this. This is happening to me because of that person, or this is happening to me because of that circumstance, or this is happening to me because of this. Those are the things to bring awareness to in your life, and just decide, okay, let me practice forgiveness with that. What does that look like? What that looks like is, when those thoughts and feelings come up, you just ask yourself, am I willing to let that go? And to just be curious if I can experience this in a new way. If I can let go of each time those thoughts come up of that person's this, or they did it to me, or I don't like this, or not let it go in a resistance way or ignoring it. That's not letting it go, but letting it go is more opening space. So another way of putting this is that love is letting go of fear. There's actually a book called that. So look it up if you're interested. I don't even remember the author's name, but it's an excellent book. And I just want to say that because those aren't my own words, even though I would agree with them and speak them as well. I have heard those words somewhere before, and it is the title of a really amazing book. So love is letting go of fear. And remember when I listed all those divisions in the mind that we all kind of trip over and get stuck in and live in literally every day of our lives until we wake up more and more? The blame, the judgment, hate, guilt, competition, shame, all of those are forms of fear. right? We all live in a tremendous amount of fear until we begin to see it and recognize it, right? First step is awareness. Wow, there is a lot of fear there, to just notice, oh, look at all this fear. And love is the antidote to fear, right? You could say it's the opposite of fear, but love has no opposites because it is the oneness of beingness. But you could say, oh, wherever there's fear, we can bring love to it. And that's what healing is. It is bringing love anywhere there is fear. It is bringing wholeness back to the mind wherever it has been divided by fear. So in a way, you could say that healing is opening to love. It is allowing love to be. And that's really what forgiveness is. It's this letting go, or this opening the door in our mind back to love, rather than keeping that closed, right? So whatever it is that we notice, again, that isn't in peace, wherever there's any kind of feeling some kind of way, which isn't bad or wrong. It's just those are indicators. Oh, this is where I can bring love into this space within me. This is where I can open that door to love again, rather than try to keep it closed. And that's what forgiveness is. It's opening that door. It's the letting go of that resistance and that holding on. And it is so beautiful. Yes, love opens the door. And forgiveness is saying yes to love. Forgiveness is really opening the door, but in saying yes to love, love's like, sure, here you go. And the door just flies right open. And the miracle is received and experienced. So I want to give another example of what this might look like, on a practical level. I know a lot of times when myself or someone else shares about this higher level of forgiveness, because I talked about how there's that continuum, right? Beginner to advanced. Even on a beginner level, you could say, well, whenever you notice any kind of upset, just introduce the concept of forgiveness. Just decide in your mind, let me see if I can apply some of that and let it go so I can restore peace to myself. And in that continuum, it moves closer and closer to what some folks call radical forgiveness, true forgiveness. I think the word radical is used because it sounds so... It sounds radical compared to just pardoning sin, right? So beginner level forgiveness is what we might call pardoning sin. Pardoning a mistake that someone made, or where you might think in your mind, well, they really did that to me. They really said that harmful thing, or stole from me, or cut me off in traffic, or, abused me, whatever the range of misstep was. They really did that, but I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna be the better person, right? So that's kind of like beginner. I would call it beginner level forgiveness, where there's a willingness to let go. That's great, right? There's nothing wrong with having that willingness, but it's still coming from, I'm right, they're wrong. I'll be the better person, and let it go for now. But they really did do that. I'm gonna pardon them. That is not true forgiveness in the sense that there's still a division there in the mind, but it is a first step, like I said, in the sense that just your willingness to let it go is a huge step from continuing to just live your life in that anger and blame, but it's kind of moving into more of a self-righteous space about it and not fully letting it go. If you don't get to the more, as you progress, the more advanced levels, again, it's not a competition, but it's just a deeper level of recognition of what forgiveness really is that you're not pardoning I use the word sin because certain books like A Course in Miracles use that, which I can relate to, but pardoning, the infraction to make it real. So that's still on a level of the mind, staying in that place of division. This is out here. This is real. I'm over here. I'm the better person. I'm going to let it go. There's still a division in the mind. But again, there's that willingness, that first step that I want to let this go to feel better. And at some point in this whole journey, you realize that's not actually healing anything, right? There's actually still harboring quite a bit of resentment and blame and separation when we don't fully forgive, when we don't practice true forgiveness and what is sometimes again called radical forgiveness, which I think is funny. It's quite radical. But that happens when we just begin with the willingness, right? The awareness of what needs to be forgiven or let go of, or what is still a division within us, and then the acceptance of that. And then once we've accepted it, it's a very subtle shift to forgiveness. Once we've accepted it, we've almost let it go. We've pretty much let it go. Like, if you can accept it, letting go starts with letting be. It's pretty much as soon as you can let it be, you've let it go. So there's just this very minute step between acceptance and forgiveness. But the fully forgiving comes from that recognition and that acceptance and that havingness of oneness. And in that, everything can be forgiven, from the seemingly most benign things like somebody taking your parking space or, flipping you off in traffic or whatever, to, stealing your life savings or or just betraying you in a deep way. There are so many ranges of experience we have as humans. Some that might seem like no big deal, I can forgive that. And some that are like, oh my God, I could never, some that we might call the unforgivable. But they are all the same. There's really no magnitude or difference when you see it from this place of forgiveness being a recognition of oneness and an allowing of that, because they end up all looking pretty much the same from that level of just, oh, that's just somebody playing that part of the ego defending itself and being separate and insisting on that separateness. And when we can forgive that, we experience something new. We experience more of our connection to that oneness and more of that presence of awareness of that oneness in the mind. And with that, so much joy. So coming back to another example, I had some experiences recently with my dogs. This just comes up as a simple example because I think it's a very common human experience where, we interact with someone we don't know and it might look ugly. And can we approach that from a place of forgiveness and letting go, from a place of lovingness and compassion? Or do we get stuck in or dance in more of the defensiveness or blame or judgment? And I'm not saying I'm perfect. And I'm also saying in this example that I find it more easy to practice this with, quote, strangers. People I don't know, people I don't already have kind of layers and layers of pictures about or experience with or relational experiences. So this is an example where I was taking a walk with my dogs and I had my son with me, and we went to a trail that I don't normally go to because it requires leashes. And my dogs are so used to being off leash and running freely in the woods because I mostly take them to places where that's okay, where that's welcome. But my son really wanted to go to this other trail, so we had them on their leashes. We started off with good intentions to follow the rules, and we had them on leashes for quite a bit. And then we got to an area where there was maybe one or two other dogs without leashes, but most still were with leashes. Not a lot of people, so my son's like, let's just take the leashes off and let them run, because they were so used to that and pulling and tugging. And so we let them off leash. And right before we got to an area where the rule changes and it's more of an off leash area, a woman came up and I didn't even see her. I heard her yelling, with very impressive force and will to put the leashes on our dogs. And so I did, got the dogs, put the leashes on. They're good dogs. They came to me when I called and I got the leashes on. And I noticed right away within me, I didn't have any blame or judgment towards her or myself, because I could have gone into total guilt for that because I was in the wrong. They weren't leashed and they were supposed to be. I was neutral. And I say that because that hasn't always been the case. I've definitely experienced times in my life where that kind of encounter would be very triggering. Like, well, she's yelling at me, She was very intense. And it could have easily been a situation where I got defensive or got upset that she was so intense or whatever. It could have easily turned into some sort of altercation, either outwardly or inwardly. And I just let it go. I did what I knew was the right thing, put the leashes on, we continued on our way. And right away, as I saw her coming towards me, her demeanor shifted from kind of that defensive anger that she was in when she first saw the dogs. She softened and she said, "Thank you," and kept walking. I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I just noticed it, like, okay, for whatever reason, maybe that I was not resistant, she softened. She didn't continue to yell at me or, berate me or or lecture me about breaking the rules or anything. She softened. She matched, in my perception, she matched the energy I was in, which was just letting it go, doing the right thing, moving on, all is well. And I just experienced the power of forgiveness in that moment, because I was also noticing that if there was any guilt coming up in me, I was letting that go as well, right? So there was a clearing of the energy. Everyone moved on. We didn't have to hold on to anything. So a minor, maybe seemingly minor example, but somewhere where I noticed something like that could happen and turn into a very different situation if someone was not in the mindset, so to speak, of forgiveness. In that situation, it could have turned into like a big argument or, like a kerfuffle on the path. But it was smooth. And I don't say that to like toot my own horn, but it was just an example that I notice is like that. Our interactions with people can be like that. Whether you're the person who's upset that a rule is being broken and you're pointing it out, or upset that a person is behaving a certain way and pointing it out, or you're the person on the other side of that coin. If you're in a place of forgiveness, the energy can smooth out and it doesn't have to be ugly and doesn't have to turn into a conflict. And so then the other 3 days later, I'm learning a lot about being in integrity with my dogs, which I usually am. But yeah, they're such sweet dogs that I like to give them spaces to run freely. So I probably will not go back to that specific path. But where we live, we don't yet have a fence where we live. And so if there's no one in my family available to take the dogs out to do their business on a leash, we let them out in the yard. And most of the time, probably not according to the neighbors, but according to what we witness, most of the time the dogs are good. They stay in the yard. It's a very large acre property. They stay, they do their business, and they come back inside. But dogs will be dogs. Sometimes they do chase some squirrels or some deer and go beyond our property into the road or down the road, which is not safe. I agree with the neighbor who came up and told me quite intensely that, we were in the wrong and that our dogs should not be leaving the property. We needed to leash the dogs and et cetera, et cetera. And again, as this person was coming up to me, right away I recognized, this is something we need to do something about. We need to address this. Realistically, we're not going to be able to leash the dogs every time they need to go out and do their business. But since we haven't been able to build a physical fence, we need to come up with a solution here. At the same time, I was able to not go into defensiveness or, match the space of righteous indignation that the neighbor was in. I was able to be compassionate and recognize, I can see how that would be upsetting for the neighbor, or just a trigger for whatever else was really upsetting him in his life. And so when I saw him coming down the driveway, I went out. I was in that space of compassion and neutrality and defenselessness, like not defending myself or wanting to judge him or anything for pointing that out. And he started off in a pretty intense space, not necessarily yelling, but pretty upset about the dogs. And as I gave him space and just listened and allowed the energy to pass through, he softened again and just said, "Thank you for hearing me." And I was like, absolutely. But it was another example of the shift that can happen when we're practicing forgiveness within ourselves. And again, I didn't go into guilt. I didn't go into judgment. But I noticed those energies could easily be there. Like that could easily turn into a major neighbor conflict, an argument. And it didn't. The energy diffused. And that can happen in any of our relational experiences when we practice forgiveness. But it's not always easy, right? And I think it might be easier in circumstances where we don't know the person. Maybe not, but For me, it seems to be much easier. What is more difficult is practicing forgiveness with those key players in our life, right? They're our curriculum, really. Those key players in our life are our forgiveness curriculum. When I say key players, those are the relationships that you have for a longer duration of your lifetime, whether that's your parents, your children. I think children are probably our most juicy forgiveness curriculum. Partners, for sure, siblings, anyone that really is a part of your life for a long duration of time. Those are the kinds of relationships that bring up a lot more forgiveness opportunity. Not everyone, right? There's going to be a lot of people have partners where there's very little to forgive and they just get to experience a lot of love between each other. But there's always going to be some relationship in our lives, right? Whether that's a parent, a child, other friends, whoever it is. And those can be a little meatier, so to speak, a little more to chew on, where the forgiveness isn't so readily available. Maybe you want to stay in judgment, or you want to stay in blame, or you want to stay in guilt. That's usually not something that we notice right away. Or you want to stay in competition, or whatever it is, that fear lingers. And those are the people in our lives that when we bring the light of awareness to that relational space and just choose forgiveness, just as an invitation to ourselves, a willingness, we can see immense transformation within ourselves and within the relationship within the other person as well. And then again, not from a place of effort, like I'm going to try to change this or fix this, but just as that gentle opening of the door to love, that willingness to forgive and the willingness to see things differently and the willingness to invite miracles, invite a new experience into our lives. So good. So I hope that's been helpful for you to hear just my sharing about my experiences with forgiveness. Those two examples are just up in my mind because they were very recent in the past few days. But there's so many examples. Really every day there's an opportunity to practice forgiveness, whether it's with the little things, again, like usually driving around in traffic, there's always many opportunities to forgive, right? You'll see your mind go into like, oh, that person needs to slow down or go faster, or usually that judging mind is very obvious in those kinds of circumstances. And then there's the deeper things, what kinds of unforgiven divisions in the mind are you holding? And you'll see those in those closer relationships. You'll see those in the way that you perceive the folks closest to you in your life, the ones that you have more long-term relationships with, the parents, the children, siblings, the ongoing friendships. And that doesn't mean that if there's someone in your life that you've decided is toxic and you cut off, that you shouldn't do that, right? Again, forgiveness is not about not having healthy boundaries. It's about claiming that clear boundary, but from a place of forgiveness, right? So forgiveness doesn't mean you're the doormat for abuse. It means that you recognize that person is not able to love themselves and therefore can't treat you with love. So you have a boundary. Maybe you don't hang out with that person anymore, or you've, cleared, quote, toxic people from your life. But are you still in your mind judging them for the way that they're being? Are you still hating them or blaming them? Or can you let that go and see from that place of compassion the pain that they're in that causes them to behave that way, and the divisions within their mind that cause them to behave that way, so that you can open the door to love. Again, that doesn't mean you have to try to jump back into that person's life. If they're not able to have the love, they're going to reject it and continue to be a toxic person. But you can, from a distance, so to speak, love them by just letting go of any judgment or blame or anger or hatred. So I hope that's been helpful. I wanted to complete this healing series with, I'm going to share a poem from my new book, Overflowing Devotion, Poems for Coming Home to Your True Self. And this one is called The Quiet Voice. Slip inside your quietest thoughts, the ones that whisper joy and hints of kindness. At every mountain of anger and ocean of grief, those quiet thoughts that beckon forgiveness. Sprinkle generous laughter and sing a quiet song of acceptance. Settle into those gentle nudges of peace. Wrap yourself in their blanket of grace. Surrender to the unrelenting, gentle voice for love. And feel the eternal smile of gratitude. Reward your sharp, clear mind and diligent heart for your willingness to listen. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Higher Vibe and that poem about the quiet voice, the voice for love within you that doesn't shout, but it's always there, whispering hints of kindness and nudging you gently towards the open arms of love. I'll see you next time. Hello, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.